Well, Coach, we'd like to transition now into a segment that we call here on the show Start, Sub, or Sit. And it's kind of a quick hitting lightning round type of segment where we're going to give you 3 basketball topics and then ask you to start one, you'd sub one, or sit one. And we can kind of have a fun little discussion around your answer. So to start, we'll give you, I know you're a student of the game and you like studying, teams and whatnot from all around the world. And so these are 3 countries right now that are in the Olympics. And so start, sub, sit. If you were to study another country in all the basketball that takes place in that country, start, sub, or sit, Spain, Italy, or France?
Wow. Wow. Okay. That's tough because there's 3 of my favorites right there.
We've had people do variations and start everybody, sit everybody. I mean, I guess if you have family in all those countries, then maybe don't.
The job of coaching is making decisions, right? And exactly. Decisions. So I'm gonna start France. And the reason I'm starting France, I'm going to go to their domestic league. The Jeep Elite League to me is a really good place to scout for Australian or for Americans to come into our league. It's played at a little bit more higher pace than other parts of Europe. I think we've had some players that have transitioned from that league into the Australian league and done really well. Casper Ware was one, John Robertson, David Anderson, these guys have come in and made remarkable transitions into our league. So I'm going to start the French. Okay. I'm going to bring the old Warriors from Spain off the bench. I think the Spanish league is really big and physical, and they might need the pace of the game at the start. We're going to bring them off the bench. And sorry, the Italians, you're out. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
I'm going to cop some heat for that.
Yeah. I hope you weren't planning on vacation in Italy. Pat, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Good. You mentioned, and which we have noticed that Australia, the NBL, they play with such great pace. I guess, how would you describe the league? Is the league trying to, push the teams to play one way as far as the rules they implement, or what is kind of Australian basketball, the first league?
Yeah, we're probably more modeled on the NBA than Europe. One of the things we've become with our Next Stars program, which is bringing in young guys from anywhere around the world, but primarily the United States, and giving them a platform to build an NBA career has been important to the growth of our league. And I feel like the league in itself and the way it's adjudicated has shifted to more of an NBA style. We used to be a far more physical league. And I thought there was kind of last year, a little bit of a shift back, maybe a little bit of a correction. So 2 years ago, LaMelo's year in Australia, it seemed like if you went within 3 feet of a guy from a defensive standpoint, the whistle would blow and guys would be lining up at the free throw line. I think last year they allowed a little bit more physicality back into the league, but certainly we have our own unique style, our own unique way of playing the game, which I think is I think it's fantastic. I mean, you say I do love the way the game's played all over the world. I think each country has its own attributes and stylistically, it fascinates me the way each league plays. I kind of feel like Australia's really found a niche of being not too much about entertainment, say like the NBA, where, it's almost to the point now where the NBA players struggle to play FIBA rules. It's almost a different sport because of the way the rules are set and the officiating. And I feel like Australia's in a really good spot as far as aesthetically pleasing basketball. It doesn't quite have the the rough and tumble of, say, like the Spanish league or the, I don't know, the Serbian league, where, you know, there's almost Greco arm wrestling going on at times. But it's also not soft. So I feel like Australia's found that really good balance, which is why it's an entertaining league. The other thing about our league that's kind of unique is that we're going into, there's 9 teams this past season, but there's going to be 10 teams next year. You play each other 4 times. It's like a playoff series every time you're playing another team. You're so familiar with what they're wanting to do. I think from a scouting standpoint, it's one of the higher level leagues because you're so familiar with your opposition, which brings another uniqueness to our league. It's a good league. It's a growing league. I think our owner and Larry Kesselman's done a fantastic job of promoting the league, and I think it's played at a high standard. We've got good players and good coaches, so it's a league on the definitely trajectory. The trajectory is up.
Yeah, Coach. Quickly, staying on that point that you play each team 4 times. So, is your playbook? Do you save stuff, or do you have to add to your playbook as you're facing these teams for the 3rd or 4th, or is it more doubling down and getting better at what we do?
Yeah, a bit of both. You playing like we got a crosstown rival, Melbourne United, and they've got 4 guards that will blow up your DHOs. Like they'll literally put you in a headlock to try and stop you coming off that, and the refs will allow it. And so for us, it may be, okay, we're going to steer clear of that action and go to something else. And we talked earlier a little bit about bringing in more drag screens when we play that group. Our pick and rolls may be a little bit higher. You know, they might be, 5 feet higher than the 3-point line, so we create a little bit more space to combat their length. Those little adjustments to what you already have, but also as you're going through the film and you see the way they defend things, you got 3 or 4 days lead up, you may be able to implement a couple of nuances or changes to your structures to try and combat the way they do things, which makes it really difficult from a coaching standpoint. You got to fly off the seat of your pants at times, because I always been telling everyone, like, once you beat a team, if you beat a team, it's really hard to come back next game and beat them again, because everyone's made the adjustments to what worked. And you kind of fatten the farm sometimes when you've got your victory. You're like, hey, we're pretty damn good. And you sort of rest on your laurels, and it's sort of like, oh, this worked for us, this worked for us, this worked for us. And then all of a sudden you come up against them in a week's time, and it's like none of that worked because they're blowing everything up. So you've got to almost stay one step ahead of the game. It's like you had all these 4 things that worked for you. You might need to go to something else next game to continue with that momentum. So it's a tough balance. There's some coaches there that I know if something worked for us one game, it's not going to be there the next game.
All right, Coach. My start sub sit is you're going to have an undersized point guard. So what would you value? Start sub sit. He's a knockdown shooter. He's an elite finisher in traffic, or he has the ability to make any pass on the pick and roll for his size.
Wow. Got to stick with I was going to say he's got to be able to defend 90 feet of the floor, but
we stuck with the offensive side. Yeah.
We love our pocket rockets in Australia. We got a lot of smaller point guards that come in and do wonderful things. With our group this year, I'm gonna get the guy that can make the pass. We got those guys that can knock down the 3 ball at every other position on the floor except that goddamn 5 man. He's going to be setting the screen, so we're spreading that floor.
He'll be good.
Get my one guard. I got to get my point guard making decisions. He's got to feed the family, so I'm going to have him feed the family. So it's passing to start.
Okay.
I'm going to have him finishing for second, and then knocking down a 3 ball third. But geez, That's a tough call. I think, again, just with the personnel that we have, we're going to have plenty of letting it go from 3-point territory next year. So he's getting cut. That guy. We'll bring the penetrator, the finisher off the rim off the bench.
Absolutely, Coach. I'd like to follow up, but I know with the 5-man actually, and within sort of what we're talking about, the pick and roll and a guard coming off. But one of the things we've noticed watching your film quite a bit is your 5-man is very active, rolling and then coming back up for a handoff and then, spraying it out. How do you work on and sort of teach that 5-man to be someone that's a threat within the offense?
Run no plays for him. Run nothing for the 5-man, and he'll keep him hungry. He'll keep coming up. He's like, I got to get my hands on the ball. I got to keep.
Right.
No, it's something that we really, when we're recruiting a 5-man, we're looking for that guy who can make the second effort, who can do a deep roll, not get the ball, not feel discouraged, know that he's going to come and make the second play afterwards, and do it again with pace. And again, we emphasize that word. I don't want him ambling up where his 5-man can trail on him and stay connected and be up at the level of the on ball. I want separation. So now there's an element of, okay, I can't get to the level of on ball. I'm now in drops, and we've got those point guards that are great pull-up shooters that enables us to go get what we want. So we preach about that second play, the third play, to keep yourself available, and to make sure you get separation on that. I know I'm showing a lot of disrespect to the 5-men around the world right now. I grew up, my favorite player of all time was Moses Malone, so my love is deep for the 5-men.
Right, absolutely.
But it's we do look to use the player that's got the repeat efforts, and sometimes they become in a little bit of a smaller package. Like our 5-men have been a bit smaller. We had a 5-man, a 6'10", less mobile center our first year, and he struggled to make those plays. He'd make the deep roll and he'd sit and watch the rest of the offense. And so he ended up not playing for us, even though he was one of our American recruits. So it's the repeat effort guy is really important for us in the way we structure things and the way we spread the floor.
With the repeat effort, do you find that it's more the mentality of the player, or is it a teachable skill?
I think it's definitely a teachable skill, and it might be the mentality that you're teaching. The one thing players always react to is court time. Okay, if you give them a role, if you give them an expectation, if their teammates understand your role and the expectations of you, then they can hold you accountable during the course of the game. It's like, hey, I need you coming up a little higher, a little quicker. They can hold you accountable as well as the coaches at the sideline. But it's really comes to role clarification. What's the expectation on the player? And it's their job now to fulfill that expectation. And if they don't, then there's a seat with me. You don't have to overcomplicate the matter.
Sure.
But at the same time, when you're putting your team together, don't get the 7-foot, 300-pounder that can't get up and do the repeat effort things. Yeah. I mean, now you're putting him in a position to fail. So it's a little bit on us in regards to how we recruit. But once you're in our house and we've recruited you, you've got to play by the way we ask you to. Otherwise, there's a seat. So it's trainable, but it's also on us to make sure we put players in a position to succeed.
Yeah. Coach, just my follow-up to your answer on the start sub sit with the guard play. And I know it was a tough decision, but you had the sit was the shooter. I'm wondering, though, your thoughts on if a defense is consistently going under a guard in the pick and roll, your philosophy on trying to still make them a threat, whether it be through slipping the action or rescreen or just ways that you can eventually get maybe someone to go over on them.
Yeah, really good question there. And we've been pretty lucky. Well, not lucky, I guess, was with our recruitment, we've gone and got guys that can knock down that shot. Like year one, we had John Robertson, who, outside of Steph Curry, might be the best shooter at the one spot on the planet. So no one ever went under him. And if they did, then, we're just back on defense because that was dropping. Kicker Sykes was a little bit different. Certainly could knock it down. A little bit more explosive of an athlete than John, and could get his feet in the paint a little deeper. Our philosophy on that is if the defense goes under, twist it. Straight away, just twist it. I love it. Twisting it, again, the defense is shifting. And it's a short shift as well. All of a sudden it's, you got your strong side defense, your screen comes out. It's like, okay, they're getting into the help side and the defense is flaring out on the other side. And all of a sudden it's coming back again. If you go under, then you're opening yourself up to be, to be messed with a little bit on that. So twist it and attack. And we've got great short rollers as well out of that 4 spot. Again, the way we recruit and the way we organize it. If it's the 4-man at the start of the offense and they're going underneath it, then we can certainly get them on a short roll if the defense is going under and get him attacking on the rim.
Okay.
Is there maybe an angle you'll teach with that first screen to encourage the defender to chase over?
Depending on the play and the action that we have, we certainly do mess with the angle on that screen. So if you want him to chase over, just set that screen a little lower and maybe don't even make contact. Let him get over the top on that one. But it's, we certainly mess with the angles and the levels that we set our screens on, depending on the action that we want at the back end of that. So certainly a teaching point for us.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So, Coach, my last one here, start, sub, sit. These are on a post catch. These are actions for your 4-man, your preference of actions on a post catch. So you enter it to your 5. We finally give him the ball here, maybe on a post catch. But enter to the 5, start, sub, sit, other actions with your 4. So having him dive to the opposite dunker spot, having him flare or set some sort of screen on the perimeter, or having him space and just letting the 5-man go to work or have him in space. Start, sub, sit.
Wow. That's a tough one. I love weak side action when the ball gets in the post, and that's kind of a trait of Australian basketball. You watch the NBA, the ball goes into the 5 spot or the 5-man in the post, and there's a lot of standing around, reading newspapers, putting your feet up on that weak side. I mean, there's so much more space, I guess, as well. And the 5-men are so talented that it's just it's a little bit different game in Australia. So I love the weak side action. So I'm going to go with the 4-man diving to start with, and then spacing out the opposite 3-point corner. Sorry, what were my other ones? There's just the spacer. He's going to be off. He's going to be out of there. What was the second one? Was
like a flare or a rescreen or something. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, let me put him in as a starter. We'll get the diver as the off the bench, and the guy standing around just sort of reading the paper. He can find something else to do. Okay.
Coach, the dive, which is now coming off the bench for you. The timing on it. When do you want him diving? Do you want him to wait and see if you dump it to the 5, have him go right away, or what's the thought on the dive?
I think a little bit of it's how you're being defended on that one. Okay. If you've got a 4-man who can shoot the ball, it may start with a little bit of a getting down, ready to catch and shoot stance, get that defender to close out and then go. If he's right up on you, you might want to chuck him a little bit, dive. So I feel like one thing you need to do, though, is when that ball goes into post is that you almost want to get eye contact with that 5-man before you make a move. Just unless it's very, very orchestrated and well rehearsed. Just so that, again, it'll minimize the turnovers. If you kind of can see each other. I always call it the smoky bar, which no longer exist in Australia since they've stopped people smoking in bars 20 years ago, which is great. But there's the old smoky bar, you see someone, you catch someone's eye, and it's sort of like there's some sort of communication there. And Yeah, I like to see a little bit of smoky bar action between the 5 and 4, or anybody on the perimeter for that matter. Again, there's a communication there with eye contact that you have that will limit turnovers and create scoring opportunities.
Okay.
Coach, within the spacing of the 3 perimeter players, how do you like them to space around the post up?
Yeah. Again, we use a lot with our basketball intellect. We go into the Bilbao action a little bit as well. So we might get that the other big setting screens for the post feeder.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of guys coming, so shooters coming off that, and because of our perimeter threats, we can sort of pick and choose which one we choose to utilize at any given moment. So depending on the set, depending on the action that we've asked of the players to produce out of the post, but generally the standstill, you're going to be dictated to for an element of that from your defense. So if you're going into the 5-man, and if your guy is going to be right up in your grill after you've fed the post, well, don't just stand there, cut, or go free somebody else up. But if he's going to drop onto the double or drop down, heavy onto the post, and you're a shooter, then maybe hold your ground. It really depends on who the player is. It's personnel driven, but also reacting to what the defense gives you.
Okay. All right. Well, Coach, can we do one more, or how are you on time?
I'm good, man. I've been in isolation for a week and a half. I need the conversation.
All right. Okay, then my last start sub sit for you, Coach, is it's a tie ball game. You're going to be on defense, and the other team will have the last possession. They're going to be going full court. We'll say there's 20 seconds left on the clock. So it's a tied game. You're going to be on defense. Will you start sub sit, foul them to get the ball back, look to press them full court, or a junk defense in the half court?
Wow. Do I have a timeout before this?
Yeah, you can have a timeout coming out of a timeout.
All right. I love a junk defense in those situations. I feel like there's an element of fun to it. But we're talking about putting the game on the line as well. So much goes into those sorts of decisions, but I know I've got to give you clarity on this. You want concise answers to the point, but I want to – you really want to see how the game's sort of evolved to get to that point. Yeah. Has a junk defense worked after timeouts previously? If so, what did, and will it work again? Have they come in prepared this time? Do you know the coach and how the way they operate? If you've gone through all of their sets and you understand what they're looking to get during that period, sometimes it's easier just to stay into your man-to-man. Pressing up the floor at that stage with 20 seconds, depending on the foul count, certainly you might want to sort of rush those last few seconds, and if you can sort of take them out of their shape early, there's an element of merit to that as well. I'm not fouling them. Okay. Yeah, you're talking about fouling them to put them on the free throw line to go the other way for the win?
Yeah, so you can basically foul them early. You want to have the ball.
Sort of hack a shack stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I want to take her. Yeah,
scores are tied.
Yeah. Is it?
No, I'm putting that one away. No,
okay.
Okay, we'll get him out of there. I'm going with junk 1, press 2.
All right. And with the junk, any sort of, maybe, I know it's a lot depends, but just kind of your preference, triangle and 2, box and 1, what's kind of your go-to? Yeah,
I mean, we're a bit of a 1-3-1 team out of timeouts. One, because not too many teams have a 1-3-1 offense. Yeah. And if you do, geez, you put that in just moments before the game. Like, you don't go through all of preseason and say, we got to get ourselves a 1-3-1 offense. So that's probably our preference. Having said that, we ran some pretty good 1-3-1 zones last year. and we'd give up O boards and putbacks. We're talking about the game winner. It's going to be a lot of pleading with my players to make sure they find someone to crack in on after the shot's released. But yeah, that would probably be it.
Okay.
Coach, just a really quick follow-up from me on this. We've talked about pace offensively for a lot of this podcast. Now we're kind of talking about late game situations a little bit here. Does your philosophy or does your thought process change on a made shot transition pace, say the last 2 to 3 minutes of the game when it's a tight score? Are you trying to hold it up more to call something specific, or are you still wanting your guys to get up and down and play with that same pace?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Obviously, in a game winner situation, it's going to be you're going to come down and run your set, or it's probably a timeout. You're taking it side out of bounds. But if like 2 minutes to go and you're down 3, are we walking it up to try and execute? I want to still continue to get out and run. Even if we're up 6 with 2 minutes to go, just again, dip your toe in the water. If you can get yourself a layup, fantastic. Go make it an 8-point lead rather than sit on your 6. If you're built one way, and the way we're built is for speed. If you're built one way and then you're like, well, now we're going to try and jam it into the post because we're being a little conservative down the stretch. And for me, it's like you're taking away your characteristics built on age-old traditions of how to execute a game down the stretch.
Sure.
For me, it's like stay with who you are, stay with your strengths, stay with what you do well. When that ball's popping and the clock's extending and you're going to get something good. You don't want to be standing around with the ball in someone's hands. Again, we're not a great ISO team. You don't want the defense to be able to set up behind you. You still want to create opportunities to score. So for me, the way our team's built and the way we operate well, I still want to play with pace.
Absolutely.
Coach, a quick follow-up from me. I don't know if it'll be quick, but a little tangent. You mentioned it twice, not a great ISO team. Is that player-driven, or can you teach certain aspects to become a better ISO team?
I think there's been probably a little bit player-driven, but a little bit on me as a coach, in that we've been that 1-5 pick-and-roll team in the late clock situation. But when you get switches and you've got the 1-5 matchup, and whether it be in the post or on the perimeter, we haven't been great in those situations of executing or getting a good shot. So if it's a one-man guarded by a 5 or a 4 or even a 3 on the perimeter, we've been so ingrained at finishing offenses in a certain way that we haven't really put the work in to the level that I probably should have with our group and being one-on-one and being able to beat your guy off the dribble and get a good shot. And it's something that we started to rectify maybe halfway through last season with more one-on-one drills at practice, boomerang action, getting it back, kickbacks. Like we've started to really make that part of our regular training day. For 2 purposes. One, to become better in those situations from an offensive standpoint, but also just from a defensive standpoint, it's like you need to be able to guard your guy one-on-one, and just ingraining that toughness is like, it's on you. You got no help. You get the stop. So it was dual purpose. We started to bring it in a little bit more in the second half of last season. The results weren't quite there. So from year 3 going forward, it's probably going to be an emphasis from the get-go from both sides of the ball.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, is it personnel-driven? For sure. Having those great one-on-one players is part and parcel of what we're looking for in our recruitment. But at the same time, I got to be better at getting our guys better at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And emphasizing the importance of it.
Mm-hmm.
The unassisted field goal is something that we certainly need to get better at. And it's great to see that ball popping and we create for each other. But, at times you've just got to get that, you got to get your guy who can just put it on his hip and say, all right, come get me. It's one-on-one. We're back in the playground. I'm going to get mine. And we got to get better at that.
Sure.
And With on that, are you thinking too about ways of maybe creating space for that one-on-one as far as how you move or actions you'll do with the other 4 players?
Yeah, for sure. Last year again, we played against Illawarra early in the season, and we beat them comfortably 3 times. And then the 4th time, I think we were up by 17 in the last quarter, and they started switching everything, and we went into a hole. Like, we just stopped trying. It was like we didn't know what we were doing anymore. We couldn't execute. We were tentative. Timid was probably the word that struck me at the time. Was like, we looked timid from an offensive standpoint, and we blew that 17-point lead and lost. And that was probably the moment that we started to bring it in more. And again, with that, working on your late shot clock scenarios and creating the movement, getting guys into spots that they like for their one-on-one contests, and really working that at our practices. So that was probably the breaking of the dam for us, where it was like, wow, we really need to get better in that area of the game. I'm not sure we got there, to be honest. There were moments where, we looked like we were overcoming some issues there, but then we'd go into old habits of becoming losing our pace, so to speak.
Yeah.
When defenses were switching. So it's something that we'll be a lot better at next season, because it's going to be a key part of our preseason.
Okay. Well, Coach, you're off the start sub sit hot seat. Thanks for playing that game. That was a lot of fun.